Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. Kat is taking the week off, but we have Skyblaze here with us this week. Skyblaze, it's been a while. How you been?
Busy, mostly. I've had a lot to do the past couple of weeks.
Okay. And Mike is still convalescing from his surgery, but he has sent us a pitch hitter in the form of Alex from This Week In Geek. So, Alex, why don't you say hello to the people and tell them who you are?
I am Mike's co-host / partner in crime, and he tagged me in because I know he wants to come back to recording everything, but if you've been following him on social media, he's had a bit of a roller coaster health-wise. So I have been the guy running a lot of the background on This Week in Geek and being his co-host. I've also been the guy that has been listening in the shadows to every appearance he's made on Nerd to the Third Power. So I was also in charge of doing all of our watching and coverage of E3 ourselves. So for me, this is podcast like 11. So I'm pretty well versed in it, and I have my opinions for sure.
All right. Well, there's certainly a lot to talk about despite appearances. So let's jump right into it. So, first E3 back after the pandemic. E3 took 2020 off because of the plague. So, but now it came back, and I know a lot of people were really excited for it to come back, and we're hoping for a really big show, but it really just kind of a bit of a whimper this year, it felt like, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Here follows my detailed analysis of this year's E3.
Yeah.
It was like 9 hours of indie games, which is okay, and a whole lot of, wow, this wasn't well planned, and then a little light at the end of the tunnel.
And then Nintendo comes along and just blows everything out of the water.
Pretty much.
So, but yeah, let's just jump right into it. So, what were your guys' general thoughts going into E3? What did you expect? What were you hoping to see? And what did you wind up coming out of this with?
Well, if I'll go first, I was hoping to see new games. I had figured that with last year being 50% games that were pushed forward to this year, a lot of things weren't shown. Last year was all about the next-gen consoles, so we knew there was going to be a lot of teases for things that weren't coming necessarily right away. I figured maybe half the games that they were going to be talking about last year were going to be pushed to this year. I was expecting a fully packed showcase of a lot of gameplay for games coming up that, we were going to have like this, like tons of games all at once in the second half of the year, and then some stuff pushed forward into 2022. And instead it looked like a lot of CGI trailers for games that aren't coming for like 2 to 3 years in some cases.
Yeah, that was something that kind of stuck on my craw this year. Was a lot of stuff that we saw this year still 2 years out. And that's really egregious when you consider that some of the stuff that we've been looking forward to, we've already been hearing about for like 2, 3, or in some cases 4 years. Skyblaze, what about you? What were you hoping to see this year?
I was hoping to find a bit more about what's coming up next for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah, something new that we didn't already know about or hadn't already been leaked, like 4 months ago. Yes, something that wasn't kind of like, the usual suspect, the battlefields and fucking Call of Duty nonsense. Something actually interesting.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so let's just start getting into the individual conferences, and let's just start with Microsoft. And I gotta say, I've been vocal in the past about my sort of apathy towards Microsoft and the Xbox Game Pass, and wishing that they would show me something that would finally get me interested in buying an Xbox Series X, assuming I would be able to find one. But that's a discussion for a different table. And this year was kind of another disappointment to you. It seems like Microsoft is really pushing the the cross-platform through Xbox Game Pass. And it really kind of confused me for a while as to why they would do this while still investing all this money into a next-gen console. Until someone actually gave me a new perspective on this that I hadn't considered before. That being our old friend Blast Seeker Brendan, who our longtime listeners remember used to be our tabletop correspondent. And he theorized that Microsoft is actually trying to appeal to a budget PC market. So people who want a PC type gaming experience without having to shell out, thousands and thousands of dollars to build a high-end PC. And that was an angle that I just never considered before, that maybe that like they're just gearing towards a different market that, I've maybe kind of grown past. But yeah, but there wasn't, as far as the games, there wasn't really a whole lot in the Xbox conference that really grabbed my eye. What about you guys?
The only one that I found vaguely interesting was The Outer Worlds 2. Because the original Outer Worlds was
Which was
good.
interesting because they specifically made fun of the fact they had nothing to show except the title. And that was still more exciting in some cases than the rest of the stuff that they showed. I agree. I think, and to your point there, beforehand, the other market that they're looking for too is they're thinking the long con of they're going to have this giant Netflix style library, because if you look traditionally, even though you, I, and everybody that we know buy tons of games, we're the people that buy 20, 25 games over the course of a console's life cycle, especially if it's like the Nintendo Switch. I've seen your shelf, dude. So
almost at 200.
Exactly, but it boggles my mind.
Games journalist, and I don't have that many.
Well, and if you look though, the general attach rate is between 1 and 3 games total on average for the average user over a console, which it boggles my mind that you would buy a $500 console and only buy 3 games. But that's the actual hard facts. So what they're trying to do is go, okay, so the average user spends about $180 total on software in the life cycle of our console. Well, how about we get somebody paying $12 to $15 per month as like a Netflix style service, and we can get 5 to 6 times that attach rate in total overall. So they're looking to take the average user from 1 to 3 games to the equivalent of spending on like 5 to 10 games through their services. Plus, there's some inkling that they're actually breaking into the Japanese market with the Series S being a small console. Again, like you said, PC stuff, where PC gaming and building your own rigs and these large full tower cases isn't a thing in Japan. Really isn't. Like because
space.
Exactly. So this way, some of them that do want the power, they might go with the X, but with the S, they get into the PC market there, and they get into a market that isn't as accustomed to buying a ton of physical media anymore, because they're still into the rental culture. So the idea that they're into a market that Netflix hasn't been doing so great in, because the movie market there is still a physical rental market, they might be that catch-all service that catches on there. And they've been signing up a lot of games for Game Pass that are Japanese games, and things that you wouldn't expect, like the Yuden Chronicles was shown there. That's the spiritual successor to the Suikoden series, right? So they're getting that day one. That was a Kickstarter. A lot of the things that they showed that were going to Game Pass, their own stuff. There's your Forzas, which are technical marvels, all these sorts of things that are from European, UK, and the North American devs. But there's a lot of things that are starting to appeal to the Japanese market, and I believe they announced that the Series S has already sold, I think, as much as the Xbox One did in its entire life cycle, and it's only been 6 months. So it's the secret market they're going after, I think, because like you or I, there's really no reason to purchase any more brand new games from them, or even really get super excited, because we know that everything is going to be coming to Game Pass anyway when they announce it. So we don't need to be sold on things, especially if I've got an Xbox Series X. Do I ever need to review as a person who reviews games on our site and on podcasts. Do I ever need to really review anything from Microsoft ever again if it's already going to come to me technically for free or $16 a month or whatever it is as part of that subscription? So they're playing a dangerous game in the Western market. But you're right, they're probably going after somebody who doesn't have experience building a PC, wants something small that can supplement their already other systems they have in their house, or they're going after a market like Japan, where they have potential huge growth that they've never had before.
Indeed.
Quick question. I refuse to give Microsoft my money. I spent 8 years working in IT. I have issues with Microsoft as a company.
Fair enough.
Does the current version of the Xbox, whichever fecking one it is, does it have Netflix and stuff built in the way that the PS4 does?
Yes. Their entire
a lot of people are actually buying consoles because they're a very effective and kind of multi-use way of having Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus.
They have two. The Series S is the small one. It's completely diskless in that it just has a solid state storage. There's no optical drive, so it's about the size. It's like half the size of a standard console. It's pretty tiny. That's what's doing well in Japan. That has all of your media services. The Series X, which is their higher end one, has a built-in 4K Blu-ray player for those of us that want physical media and still want the ability to play your Blu-rays and everything too. But if you sign up for their Game Pass, which is their Netflix-style service, certain countries get a bonus deal where you can get a discount or a few months free of Disney Plus as well. So they're starting to test the waters with bundling other streaming services with their game service as well. So you wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years we start hearing about it's like, oh, Game Pass is now $20 a month or $25, but it includes Netflix as well. So that's maybe where they're going. They want everything to be all digital, and whether you're a collector or not, you want that or not, they're going to find a market, I think, for it. But as far as what they showed at E3, it was like 30 games, I think, 27 of which were coming to their Game Pass service day one, meaning you don't have to pay a cent more than your subscription. And out of the things that they showed, there were a couple JRPGs that I was interested in, and then some stuff where I was like, oh, that looks neat. But a whole heck of a lot were just CG trailers with no gameplay saying 2022 or 2023.
Yeah. I will say, going back to what Skyblaze said about the Outer Worlds 2, I absolutely love that trailer. And it reminded me very much of the first trailer that came out for the 2005 Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie, where it just broke down what makes a trailer. Totally. I still haven't played the first Outer Worlds, but I'm told that it would be right up my alley because it's basically Fallout New Vegas in space.
Yep.
And Fallout New Vegas is my favorite game in the series.
I played a bit of it. It's Fallout New Vegas in space, even more tongue-in-cheek humor, and it's got a little bit more cartoony, quirky style.
Yeah.
It's also got like the way that they've handled things like the color palettes and things for each different area. It's a visual feast in a way that a lot of the Fallout games kind of aren't, because they stick to that very drab color palette.
Yeah. I also am finally got a reason to be interested in Halo Infinite, because up until now I was led to believe that it was going to be just strictly a multiplayer game, but no, it's apparently actually going to have a campaign, and they're apparently taking in directions that I'm actually kind of interested in. So I may get that on Game Pass when it comes out. That might actually be what gets me into Game Pass. But the big one for me out of the Microsoft presentation, this is the one that got me salivating: Psychonauts 2. Holy shit, I was vibrating with joy. I'm so excited to see that.
How long has that bloody thing been in development?
Oh god, years and years and years and years. Like, it's been stuck in development for at least a decade. But like, Psychonauts is one of my favorite games of all time, and to see it come back, I still have to play Rhombus of Ruin, which is the VR one. And apparently Psychonauts 2 is going to pick up immediately after that. But like, to see Psychonauts 2 back, and to see its visual style hold up so well with current gen graphics, because one of the things that I was really worried about. This is something you kind of see in a lot of modern gen games, where games that previously had very stylized graphics have gone sort of ultra realistic, because that stylization tends to look a little funny with the ultra high definition hardware. So to see that old style cartoony art style from the original Psychonauts come back and actually look good with current gen graphical capabilities, it warms the cockles of my cold black heart.
Now that's one game that I've always heard about, never played, and it is obviously on Game Pass, the first one, so I'll probably have to check it out. I know that it was rumored, like, and there were people talking, oh my god, are they going to do it? I think as far back as when the studio started crowdfunding their games, which is it's got to be over 10 years ago now.
Oh, there have been rumors that Psychonauts 2 was in development as far back as when Brutal Legend came out. Another game that desperately needs a sequel, but that's neither here nor there. Psychonauts 2 rumors have been swirling around in one form or another for about 15 years.
Because it looks so quirky. And again, they're touting that as, hey...
It's surprisingly dark in places, though. The storyline can get quite emotional.
That's the vibe I'm getting, at least from the trailer. Like, I'm somebody who's looking at it from a perspective of, I've heard the name, but I've never played. So they are smart. Like, this is another one, Game Pass, and Microsoft is sort of covering their bases with all different styles of games. And it's cool that seems like they left this to their own devices and didn't have any studio meddling to get it a certain way.
Okay. Skyblaze, what about you? I know that you have a firm dislike of Xbox, but was there anything that at least gave you a wobble in the Xbox presentation?
So I was interested by Outer Worlds, and was the Hellblade sequel in the Microsoft presentation? They all started blurring together.
No, they did a extended preview of some of the games a few days later, and they showed off that they're building it's basically, I think that's a 2024 game at this point.
That wouldn't surprise me.
They were saying that they're building the engine, and they showed off some more of the landscape that they did, but it seems very far off.
Yeah, that was a bit kind of ooh.
Hellblade, that's another one I need to pick up.
Yeah, I've got access to the VR version, but even my PC won't run it.
Really?
I have a GeForce 1060, and it doesn't run smoothly on my 1060. You need at least a 1080 to run the VR version of Hellblade.
If you caught me a couple months ago, I would have actually sold you my old 1080 because I just upgraded to a 3060.
You asshole.
Yeah.
When you look at that, even at retail price, our 3060 is amazing. You can see why somebody might go with the Series S or Series X when for less than the price of your video card, you got a whole system that can play these games.
Yeah. So.
Damn you, Bitcoin miners!
Exactly.
All right. See, other things that stood out in the Xbox presentation. Not a racing guy, but I have got to admit, like, the Forza presentation looked absolutely gorgeous. Like, I actually had to keep checking throughout that whole thing for the blurb at the bottom that said in-engine footage. I'm like, this can't be real. This has to be pre-rendered. Like, I at points, if you hadn't told me it was a game trailer, I'd have thought you were showing me a movie trailer.
The crazy thing is, they came out. That's not even using ray tracing. That's using all the baked in. Like, they're just that good at making that game look that good.
Yeah. And going back to what Skyblaze said about Hellblade, this is again going off a bit of a tangent, but again, that's another one. That first trailer, if you hadn't told me what it was, I would have thought it was a movie trailer. Like, it's actually kind of terrifying to look at now and think that's not a real person, but it looks so real. It looks like she's about to leap out of the screen and rip my throat out with her teeth.
What's really astonishing about that is that it completely manages to avoid that kind of uncanny valley effect that you get with CGI characters a lot of the time, which is the thing I found most impressive. Because even a lot of really high-end CG can look a bit unreal at certain points. The fake Peter Cushing they had in the Star Wars film, that just didn't look quite right. And presumably they had a big fucking budget, but here we are, console games managing that.
The only question that remains now about that is whether or not that is actually going to be how it looks in game, or if they only manage that for the trailer. Because
I think it's going to be in game because we're looking a few years away. My question will be, how much of that game is game? As far as are they going to have it still like the first game, or is this going to be a very short technical style demo that they then use as a method to sell their game engine?
Yeah, another good question. But so yeah, anything else out of the Xbox conference that caught your guys' eyes?
New game announced from the developers of the Just Cause series called Contraband. It appears to be an Xbox exclusive, but again, it was just, hey, here's an announcement that we're making a game, but we're not going to show anything about it because it's probably at least 2 years away.
Okay. Skyblaze, anything else for you?
It's Microsoft, so probably not, no.
All right, well then let's move on to the one that me and Skyblaze are probably going to retch about for a good while, the Square Enix conference, also known as Guardians of the Galaxy, with special guest a bunch of Final Fantasy mobile games.
Do not get me started.
I'll be fair to the Guardians of the Galaxy series, Galaxy game. It actually looks interesting. I'll probably pick it up. Maybe not day one, but maybe after it's dropped down. But it actually looks interesting.
Wait 2 weeks and it'll be half price.
And I'm interested to see what they're doing with the story, because I got kind of a telltale storytelling, but with actual action involved vibe out from what they showed of the decision making process. So be interesting to see how that's implemented, but not a day one purchase for me.
It appears to be based on the same engine of Marvel's Avengers, because Eidos Montreal was brought in to try to fix that disaster that Crystal Dynamics was floundering trying to make. And it pisses me off because this means it's another game that comes out from Eidos that isn't Deus Ex. And it's quite clear that they're rushing through it because it looks like Disney has really changed their initiative in the last few years. They reopened Disney Interactive Studios. They're looking to get out of their exclusive contracts they have with all of their other studios like EA for Star Wars. This was a clear, we have to fulfill a contract game. This looks very rushed. The UI looks bad. This game was being shown on next-gen hardware running at less than 30 frames per second in their trailers. And to top it all off, you got the generic-looking actors because they didn't want to use the likenesses of the people in the movies that are still currently under contract. This isn't a Marvel's Avengers thing where half of the people no longer under contract. Everybody is still going to be the same people appearing in Guardians 3, as well as other properties moving forward. They got like a 10-year deal with these people.
I have an explanation for that, because I actually have a friend who actually is a Hollywood agent, and I actually asked him why they didn't use the actors' likenesses in Avengers or Guardians of the Galaxy, and the reason is because video game likeness rights are a completely different thing from film contracts. Huh?
But then don't make the game is basically what I'm saying. If you're, it's hard to tie it in. Taking that aside, the voice acting is terrible. Every actor sounds the same, or they sound wrong for the character. And then it turns out it's the same voice actors from the cartoon. And if that's the case, it's just really bad voice direction. I have a lot of issues with this, especially since it took up most of their show. And this is going to be a bargain bin game by Christmas.
Okay. I don't have high hopes for it, considering how much they fucked up Marvel's Avengers and how bad that was. Shall I tell you the one that really ground my gears? Are you ready for this one?
Yep.
So Platinum Games is working with Square Enix. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Nier and Nier Automata. And I was like, oh wow, this looks like really interesting. And like Platinum Games, they do really good stuff. And you know, Square Enix have had their ups and downs, but there are a lot of Square Enix games I really like. And then they said the words games as a service.
And then they showed muddy graphics that
Yeah.
that again sub 30, like 25 frames per second on an engine that looks like it would be running on the original Xbox. We're talking 2002 Xbox. And
I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, and then you find out that it's Platinum's B team, the same team that made the mediocre titles like the TMNT game. The team that isn't as good. It's not the Nier Automata team. It's not the Transformers Devastation team. It's not the Astral Chain team. It is
I was about to say, because if you're about to tell me that Astral Chain is mediocre, you and I are going to fight.
No. This is their B team. The A team is, as far as I know, working on Bayonetta 3. So it is the team that they put together to fulfill a contract. It was not supposed to be a games as a service game. It was supposed to be single player. And then Square came to them at the last minute and said, we have to release a game. What state is it in? What can we just release now? And then they had to alter and change some things around to make it fit a criteria, which it is going to bomb. And it at the same time, Platinum doesn't care.
It's going to do such damage to Platinum Games' rep, though.
They don't care because they've been bought by Tencent. So they've got the crazy Chinese oligarchy money. So they only care about one contract with any company now, and right now that's Nintendo. That's the only contract they care about because Tencent is footing the bill for everything else.
What the fuck was going on with that Final Fantasy Origin bollocks?
I played the demo, and I can say that.
Oh wow, you got it to work.
Oh yeah, after 2 days. And I'll tell you this: it looks like it's running at 480p upscaled.
Oh god.
It is the worst.
Now this is that. Just to make sure I'm on the same page. This is that Stranger of Paradise thing, right?
Yes.
Yep.
With the guy who looks like he fell into the bargain bin of a Gap.
That's the one.
And the second you
tuck in your damn shirt. I'm sorry, that bothered me after that whole trailer. I'm just looking. I'm looking at the main character. I'm like, tuck in your gut. Either pull it out of your pants or tuck it in. Pick one.
They made a mistake because they made it seem like you don't. That's how you look the whole time. Within about 2 seconds, you get armor, and every piece of armor you equip changes your look. But the gameplay is terrible.
And it probably looks like it's over designed like every Todd McFarlane character ever.
It does. And some fans of like Neo and Soul style games, they say that it's pretty good from the gameplay. It's not. It is horribly clunky, really unintuitive control scheme. You're forced to press the center button on the touchpad to interact with anything, and it takes 2 to 3 seconds for it to interact. So, piece of armor on the ground, 2-second wait when you press a button to pick it up. You're forced to use to move your thumbs into spots that are in weird spaces just to interact with the world. Enemies keep respawning if you go off screen too long, like it's a PS1 game. Everything is black and brown with little lighting headlights of like highlights of things. The AI for your supporting characters, they just stand there and do nothing or randomly get in your way and get you hurt. The AI
we're veterans of Kingdom. We're veterans of Kingdom Hearts, so that makes no difference to us whatsoever.
No, this is much worse than Kingdom Hearts AI. This is by far the worst game, and I know it's an early alpha demo, but it is the worst game or demo I have ever played. Ever. It is enough to damage Square Enix's entire reputation if they release it as is.
Well, it's not like they're doing a whole lot this presentation to really do anything to salvage it. The thing that really set me off, this is the one that almost gave me whiplash, was the announcement for the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster collection. I was like, oh, I was actually excited about this because based on what little we saw in the 10 seconds they gave us of it, is they're actually using actual sprite art instead of the shitty ass redraws that they did for the remakes of 4, 5, and 6 that we got a couple years ago.
And proper
then at the end of it was like coming to Steam and mobile.
Because they only care about the Japanese market, which doesn't care about any console anymore except for the Switch, with a little bit of PlayStation.
Which just baffles me because this would be a perfect compilation to put out for the Nintendo Switch, because then you would have the whole first 12 Final Fantasy series minus 11, which is the MMO, on one console. It would be absolutely perfect for the Switch, and the fact that they're sidestepping it just completely baffles me. Now I don't know. Maybe it'll get a release on the eShop down the line, but like the fact that this isn't coming to the Switch or the PlayStation, it baffles the hell out of me, because this is something this is the kind of thing that Final Fantasy fans have been screaming for years.
Well, to me, it would be better if they went and remade all the games individually in the Octopath 2D, 2.5D or whatever, the HD thing. If it was the Octopath style, I think everybody would be super happy, like they're doing with the Dragon Quest games now. But what they did show, if you look at the screenshots, the interface on half of the screenshots is using an Xbox controller, which I guess makes sense for the Steam version, like to show that. Mm-hmm. But there are screenshots that go by very quickly, and if you pause and look, very distinctly using the Nintendo Switch button configuration and overlay and everything that you would see in a regular Switch game. So they're running on Switch. What they're not showing is that they're probably going to come to Switch at a later time. So, because that, even for the Japanese market, that would be the perfect thing. They're probably going to release a physical copy with every game on it in Japan, and you'll have to spend like $200 importing it because you're going to want to. And then over here, it'll probably just be digital only. But then again, didn't they release a physical copy of the Mana collection?
Yeah, and that actually got released over here in the States.
Yeah, and the Final Fantasy.
I'm not going to say anything.
Okay. What's up?
Because you said it got released over there in the States. Guess what?
It didn't come to Europe?
No.
Well,
that's not last time I checked.
Maybe that's karma for all of the amazing European collector's editions that you guys get that we don't.
Alex, if you value your life, you will be silent now.
This is a bad place to go.
Okay, I won't go there. Let's just all be happy and hold hands and say that it's coming everywhere.
Here's a quick quiz for you. What was the first Final Fantasy game to be released in Europe?
Was it Mystic Quest?
It was.
Ooh. Yeah.
The first numbered Final Fantasy game to be released in Europe?
Probably 7?
It was 7.
Well,
but you guys got Terra Enigma, right? So that's a trade-off.
Yay!
Well, anyway, we're going off a bit on a tangent, but Skyblaze, if it hasn't come to the UK, hit me up and we might be able to work out a deal. But
we can still get it digitally. We just can't get the physical version.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah. The fact that you mentioned that some of those screenshots are using Switch controls, that's the only reason why I'm not as angry as I probably should be about this remaster collection, because there's that one little sliver of hope that just maybe it might get a console release. But like, it like, here's the thing that really bothers me about how Square Enix has been treating Final Fantasy in general. Like, this is the franchise that paid the bills for 30 years. This is what Square built its name off of. I mean, the history of Square is the history of Final Fantasy. The two are inseparable, and it just it kind of feels like they're kind of just chucking all that out, baby with the bathwater sort of thing.
It's almost like they're still mad at Sakaguchi for leaving.
It'd be like Disney saying, okay, we're not going to do Mickey Mouse anymore. When that was what you built your whole legacy off of.
What was notable to me about the Square Enix show was what was not there. There was no Dragon Quest, no Kingdom Hearts, no Deus Ex.
Dragon Quest was the week earlier. They had their own special show, and that was interesting because they had somebody trying to translate on the fly while they were showing it in English.
Oh God!
In English for the first time. It was one girl. Sounds like she had to watch what they were saying and then quickly say what they were saying because they didn't give her a script. But what they announced there was the next Dragon Quest game is going to be more adult themed or mature with, like, I guess they're trying to go the gritty style, which is weird for Dragon Quest. A bunch of mobile games, a clone of Candy Crush with Dragon Quest in it.
Because we absolutely need another one of those.
Yeah. Then they announced a single-player version of Dragon Quest, what is it, 10, the MMO, and said that that one might be coming to the West because they made it like a chibi art style, and it's apparently all of the quest lines from the online MMO up to whatever the newest version is, but it'll be in an accessible format that's like traditional, so it's not like crazy MMO grindy. We'll see about that. And then the other thing that they showed there that was the bigger deal was Dragon Quest III was getting remade in the same engine as Octopath Traveler. And that is coming to a simultaneous worldwide release.
That I am interested in, because Dragon Quest III is like, that is the game that made the JRPG. Like, if you look at the at the history of it.
Yeah, like you play as the character of legend from the first two games, so it makes sense that it's technically the earliest point in their franchise.
Yeah, so that I actually am interested to see, because I absolutely loved Octopath Traveler, and I've been wanting to go back and play some of the older Dragon Quest games. But again, this brings us back to my previous point, which is like Dragon Quest gets more respect from Square than Final Fantasy.
Yep, I don't know what it is.
And it's an Enix title.
Yeah, that's true. It's an NX title, and I still think that they're mad at Sakaguchi for some reason. Maybe they didn't like that he left and made Mistwalker, and then just did nothing ever since. Except did the game on, was it Apple Arcade? But I think we didn't see Final Fantasy 16. We didn't see Final Fantasy 7 Remake. We didn't see Forspoken. What do those games have in common? They're PlayStation exclusives, and Sony had no presence whatsoever, except for, I guess, at the kickoff show, they had they showed off Death Stranding for PS5 Director's Cut,
and no one cares.
Yeah, and nobody cares, and it'll probably be a free upgrade for people that already own the game. So, if it isn't, it's not going to sell. So
you're thinking that we'll see all that stuff that you mentioned maybe in a Sony State of Play later this year?
I wouldn't be surprised if in the next few weeks, no later than the end of July, because they wouldn't want to get too close to Gamescom. We're going to see Sony when they can have all eyes on them, and it will be updates on all of those exclusive titles that they've got. They've got, like, I think, a deal with a few more games probably from Square, so we'll see Square stuff there. We'll see their first-party games, because as of right now, there is absolutely nothing on record that Sony has coming out for the rest of the year at all, and that's never happened before. Like, they have now that Ratchet and Clank is out, they have absolutely nothing from any of their studios dated for anything. So we're going to see something real soon, and we're probably going to see some gameplay updates on the Final Fantasy games. It's weird that it wasn't at the Square Enix thing. I feel like they shouldn't have had the Dragon Quest thing a few weeks earlier. They should have taken all of those games and put those trailers and launch information in with their Square Enix Presents, and I feel we wouldn't have been as mad if we had seen some of those Dragon Quest things with the mediocre stuff that they showed.
Okay. Well, we do have other stuff to get through, so we're moving on. So we're now a brief mention of the Capcom conference. That was it. Now Ubisoft. Ubisoft, Mario plus Rabbids, I'm interested in. The rest of it, all Tom Clancy stuff and DLC for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Rainbow Six Siege has been going for 6-7 years now. Isn't it about time for a new one?
6 years. They said that they're going for 10. They're going to do this thing where they'll have their franchises have a live service game like that, but they are going to release other shorter regular games. So that other Rainbow Six, which used to be Rainbow Six Quarantine, and they smartly changed the name of that right quick and changed it from a contagion made in a lab to aliens taking over very quickly. That is being released, and it's going to be out concurrently with Rainbow Six Siege. So they're going to use Siege and their other games as a service games to fund their single player and regular multiplayer adventures. So if that's the way they want to go, I'm okay with it. I haven't played Siege, and I never planned to, but the other games that they showed, I'll give them a go, but there wasn't anything there that made me go, hey, I have to get it day one, except for Kingdom Battle. And if it hadn't have been spoiled by Nintendo themselves by releasing the trailer 6 hours earlier than they were supposed to, I think everybody would have been super crazy happy for it.
You mean Sparks of Hope?
Yeah. Sparks of
Kingdom Battle was the first one.
It's Kingdom Battle 2 in space with other things. And I do like that they changed the style from just square-based grid movement to a more Valkyria Chronicle style, where it looks like you can move pretty much anywhere on the map, or at least in a circular area. It looks faster paced too.
I was amazed at how visually stunning that game looks. I mean, people.
I guarantee it's a Switch program that what they showed, but they're not saying yet because it's not coming up till next year.
Well, we'll see. But like, I mean, I don't know if that is a base Switch game. That looks stunning.
I'm saying it right now. I'm saying it right now. Sorry, you can quote me on it, and I'll owe you a pop or something. That was not running on the base Switch because the base Switch would never get 60 FPS at that quality.
All right, well, I'll take that bet. Skyblaze, what about you? Anything in the Ubisoft conference that caught your eye? No.
Ubisoft are Ubisoft, and shooty bang games don't interest me, so meh.
All right, well, then let's round out our discussion of E3 with the Nintendo conference. And this was, to me, the undisputed high point of E3. Not a high bar to clear, although Nintendo did bring some bangers in with them. I'm just going to come out and go right out of the gate by saying Metroid Dread, I was vibrating with excitement at that trailer. Like, I was literally like shaking with joy, and the fact that they named it Metroid Dread and finally brought that 15-year-old joke to a conclusion was just icing on the cake. I absolutely love Metroid. Love that we're getting a new 2D game. The only thing that I didn't like about the reveal trailer that they showed us was the colors on Samus's suit. I'm sorry, she looks like a fucking breath mint. Fighting evil with a minty fresh shell, like just. I'm sorry, I love the classic orange. But yeah, and the fact that this game is apparently doing so well in pre-orders gives me a lot of hope, because Metroid has traditionally never been a huge seller. Like, it's never been an outright failure, but it's never been like, it's never been a mover of systems like Mario or Zelda have been. So the fact that we're getting this along with Metroid Prime 4 still being in development, I'm really hoping that this is going to be the push that the Metroid franchise needs to really push it over the top and make it a true bona fide AAA franchise, because I really want more Metroid.
Yeah, I saw people complaining about the price, and it's like they've been trained to think that if something, isn't AAA, super realistic graphics, or if it's a 2D game, that you're supposed to pay less. That's not how this works. If the game is premium quality to play, you pay full price, and that's what it looks like for this.
I think, especially with Metroid in particular, I think another part of that comes from the fact that the last couple Metroid games were 3DS titles, which had a lower price point just by their nature from console releases.
Yeah, the Kirby effect.
Yeah. So I think that the fact that this is the first Metroid game for a console that we're getting in close to 20 years, I think that's also contributing to the price woes. So that was the big thing for me out of the Nintendo conference. The Kazuya reveal for Smash. Not a big Tekken fan myself, but I know Tekken fans are happy. As far as I'm concerned, going forward for Smash reveals, I've got Pyra. I have what I want. So anything else, is for anything else, I don't care about.
Well, unless they announce Shantae.
Oh God! Don't do this to me! Don't give me another hope.
Hey, I'm gonna go conspiracy theory on you, because they announced Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, which I don't know if you know this, is being developed by the Way Forward, the Shantae team. Don't give me hope. Don't do that to me. So that was cool to me. Like, I've never played those games, but I've heard great things. So I'm happy to check that out. There were more surprises here than I was expecting. I expected everything to have been leaked.
Yeah, the Advance Wars thing was quite funny to me, because a friend of my husband's at work just randomly gave him like this really nice metal box with a DS in it and a whole ton of games, including some of the Advance Wars stuff. And I was like, oh wow, I've never played these before. I should get around to doing that at some point. And then this announcement happened. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I might pick those up at some point. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I love tactical military strategy games. So the Advance Wars ones were ones that passed me by the first time through. So I'm going to pick those up. Another one I'm going to check out: Metal Slug Tactics. I've never played a Metal Slug game before. I've heard they're wonderful, but this one, this one got my attention.
It looks great. Like the pixel art, .emu, the company producing it, they've been knocking it out of the park. They're the same team that's also working on the new TMNT arcade style game. And I've played, as most people that have played the Metal Slug games, played them at a pizza parlor. It was like in the Neo Geo,
or a swimming pool,
or a swimming pool, anywhere where they didn't want to have more than one arcade game, so they had a Neo Geo with like 2 or 3 games in it. So they were super fun, and they seem to have captured that feel from it, and turned it into a tactical game that I didn't think would look as good as it did.
Okay, Skyblaze, what about you? Anything from the Nintendo conference really grab you?
So Metro Dread looks kind of interesting. Advance Wars, the rebooted version of Advance Wars was pretty interesting. Other than that, I don't know.
See, I thought you'd gone whole hog on Shin Megami Tensei 5. Now we finally have a release date for that.
I have a weird relationship with the mainline Shin Megami Tensei games, because I really want to like them, but I tend to keep hitting this difficulty brick wall where if you do not do like everything exactly perfect, the game punishes you quite hard.
Yeah, and 1, 2, and 4 were first-person dungeon crawls, which no bueno for Alex.
Yeah,
but
I'm
I'm
not a fan of those either.
I played the remaster of Nocturne that just came out.
I played Nocturne when it was originally out, and I was like, this is a really interesting story and a really interesting world, but you are giving me like tiny breadcrumbs when I want a sandwich.
They gave a excuse me, a new mode for it. They call it Merciless. I call it the I can actually beat it mode, where the enemies don't really do one-hit kills at the beginning of a round that wipes your party. They've also, which it also doubles or triples the experience you get. Like, it's a much more accessible Persona-esque difficulty with that new version. And I played it. It has some flaws that date back to the PlayStation 2 era when it originally came out, where you sometimes will have to just look up a FAQ online because otherwise you won't know where to go.
Yeah.
But they did streamline it a fair bit, and this new trailer, it appears to be taking the gameplay style from that game, mixing it with a little bit more of the modern stuff they've done with Persona, and I'm getting vibes that the demon the entity they say that the main character forms a pact with looks a hell of a lot like the main character from Nocturne.
It does look a bit like the Demi-Fiend. I'm
wondering if it is a sequel, at least, or they're hiding the fact that it's a sequel.
They've done that before. They've done stealth sequels before. So, I don't know. I've got a bit of a weird I want to know a bit more about it before I decide if I'm excited or not about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it being the best-selling game in the mainline franchise because you are going to have people that over the last 10 years have been playing Personas 3 through 5 that want to check it out. And if they're smart, they'll have an easy mode. And easy mode for Shin Megami Tensei is not easy mode for other games. Easy mode is like regular.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Although there was one thing that really annoyed me about E3 this year. I'm a big fan of the Dot Hack series of games, anime, manga, everything else. And CyberConnect 2, before E3, said, oh, keep an eye on the Bandai Namco conference because we've got a big announcement. And the entire Dot Hack fandom were like, new Dot Hack game? Because, that's what CC Corp have traditionally done with Bandai Namco. Nope.
Their entire presentation was for one game that's coming to Game Pass, and it's just part of that, what is it, like their horror anthology?
Yeah.
And
it was like,
they showed nothing for Scarlet Nexus, which is coming out this coming week. It's like they just dropped all marketing for it, like they know it's going to fail. And then there was a little bit of Tales. There was nothing from their licensed properties. It was a weird year for a lot of these Japanese devs.
And it was like, but CC Corp said there was going to be something, and then there completely wasn't. So, was this like, were CC Corp told that there was going to be something and there wasn't?
Maybe
was
it's
it
going to
changed
show up
last minute?
Maybe again, I'm keep thinking things are moving forward to the PlayStation show whenever they do theirs, because the last thing that they put out was that that trilogy of, I think, the second, like there's 2 trilogies in the franchise or whatever, right? There's 2 versions.
There's 2 series. Yeah, there's the one. There's it's sometimes called IMOQ, Infection, Mutation, Outbreak, Quarantine. That's the first set of 4. And then there was GU, which was the second series, and they did remaster GU for the PS4.
And that was exclusive, I believe, right? So it wouldn't surprise me if they do that again.
Although it did come out on Steam later. Although they also put a lot of like quality of life updates and stuff into the GU remaster. So a lot of fans are expecting there at some point to be the original quartet being remastered. And that's what they expect them to announce, but it just didn't happen.
There were a few games that were not just from Square Enix that were conspicuously absent from anything here. There were a lot of actual devs and publishers that didn't even show up. Xseed showed up briefly with like a little tiny montage of games we've already heard about. NAS America was completely absent. As far as
Sega only promoted 1 game.
Yeah, Sega has other titles in development that we just haven't seen, and there was basically nothing shown.
Yeah, they talked about 2 Point Campus, and that was it.
Yeah, and not to mention, like, they dropped, was it, I think this week or something, the Olympic Games game is coming out, and that was briefly shown at the Sonic thing, but there's been nothing on them from, like, there's a lot of games that just didn't show up.
What's really bizarre, though, is that it's the Sonic anniversary this week.
Well, they did a Sonic showcase, again, the same week beforehand that the Dragon Quest one was, and all they did was show off that, hey, we've got a new game in development. It leaked as, I think it's Sonic Rangers.
Possibly. There's a really obscure kind of logo thingy that everybody's kind of squinting at and trying to figure out what the hell it says.
Yeah, they looked at the code for it or something on the site and the meta tags or something, and it showed that it was Sonic Rangers. They showed off another Sonic trilogy of the previous game, of the original games coming to modern gen, and some people were like, why do they keep doing that? Well, this one's different because it actually includes Sonic 3, which has been in rights limbo forever. So there's that, and again, there's like not much else. Sonic Colors, that was shown off, I think, briefly at one of the showcases here.
Well, but we also know that was coming out for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
That was leaked like a month and a half ago.
Yakuza Like a Dragon coming to Game Pass, so you can get every Yakuza game on Game Pass for free. There's not a whole lot else, and they have a lot of other studios working on things.
Yeah, they didn't really talk about Lost Judgment, and that was only announced a couple of weeks ago, the sequel to Judgment, which is also a kind of Yakuza adjacent game.
Yeah, and that's coming out in like 2 months, or I think.
Something like it's pretty soon, but yeah, they didn't talk about that. It was really disjointed this year's E3. It didn't feel like a...
Capcom had nothing new except to say, we're working on DLC for Resident Evil 8. That's it. We got nothing else. And like, they did, so a lot of these companies showed some trailers of things we already knew existed, but like, it's going to be a weird 2022 if this is what's to be indicated. Everything looks like Microsoft has a couple games coming next year. We have nothing from Sony. Nintendo's fine. They're doing their own thing. And they seem to be having a new first-party title every month until Christmas.
Although they are doing some stuff that kind of annoys me, Nintendo. So, like...
Yeah.
Like with the Zelda thing. So, first off, Breath of the Wild 2, I'm absolutely ecstatic for. I love that we finally got to see some gameplay of that. And it's looking like that this game is going to have not just the same overworld from the first game, but also a second overworld map on top of that with all the sky stuff. So, like, that excites me. I just hope that there's, like, more content to actually explore in this map than there was in Breath of the Wild besides just the shrines. But then they also talked a bit about, like, you know, how, this is the Zelda anniversary, but the only thing that we're doing is this little Game & Watch, which it's a cool little device. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, Zelda's up there with Mario. It's another one of those franchises that Nintendo has built its legacy on. And I was really hoping that they would do more for the anniversary than just Skyward Sword and this Game & Watch. I was really hoping that we were going to see, like, a Zelda 3D collection like we got with Mario. And, like, if they were to do that, I was hoping that it'd be, like, you know, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess. But they're like, no, we don't have any other titles for the anniversary. It's just this Game & Watch.
Yeah, and not to mention the sequel to Breath of the Wild, aiming for a 2022 release. That means 2023. That means they don't think they're even going to get it out for Christmas.
Yeah, so
there was a heck of a lot of that, and it's another one where they showed it running, and I'm like, that's not running on the current Switch. There's no way it's running on the current Switch with how it looks. So, like, there was rumors that they were going to, like, talk about next gen hardware or that half step sort of hardware release. We heard nothing.
Yeah, let's be clear. Those weren't rumors. Those are wishful thinking. Nintendo was upfront for weeks leading up to E3 that their presentation was going to be all about software, that they weren't going to talk about hardware. If, and this is a very big if, we hear anything about a new Switch hardware this year, it's probably going to be sometime in the August to November range. I don't think they're going to be revealing anything soon. And if they do, it's probably just going to tell us that it's in development. We're probably not going to see a release next year or the year after, especially because the Switch is still selling gangbusters. It would be absolutely stupid of them to put out new hardware right now when the Switch is still selling like hotcakes.
Unless the reason they're switching is to circumvent a shortage of specific chips, which is possible. They might be willing to eat the dev cost and the marketing cost of that if it means that, hey, we're not going to be short several million consoles because we're using old tech.
I don't see them being willing to risk a backlash from buyers who just purchased a Switch within the last year or so. And are still buying them now because, like I said, if you look at the sales numbers, the Switch is still moving a lot of units.
Yeah.
So I really think that they're going to wait until the sales numbers cool down a bit before they even talk about the next Switch.
The only thing that I would say might worry them is they're going to be losing a lot of third-party support with all these games coming out now, because there are third-party games that will not be able to run on their hardware. And they've already run into that with running some games through Google Stadia cloud services. You know, whenever it says Cloud Edition, it's actually running on Google Stadia through the Switch. And,
Stadia. Mike still has an apology for that one.
Well, Stadia is going to survive through that kind of a method. Like, they've already got the deal with Ubisoft. All of the Ubisoft backend is run through Stadia. They've got the deal with Nintendo to run their cloud games. But it's going to be very interesting to see, because anybody making multi-platform games is already struggling, and you're seeing Switch games come 6 months after the release on other platforms. They're going to need to do something. Doesn't matter if Nintendo games look great on it, and they do, but they still make at least 50% of their money off of third-party titles, and if they can't even run the titles, they're going to have to do some sort of hardware upgrade.
Well, that's speculation that's a little off topic from what we're discussing. But anyways, let's start winding things down. Of course, as is our tradition with our E3 blowouts, we have to talk about what we thought was best in show and what our biggest disappointment was. So, Skyblaze, let's start with you. What was your best in show and what was your biggest disappointment?
I think the Nintendo one was probably the best in show. In terms of a game, I don't really know. Biggest disappointment? I'm torn between the Final Fantasy stuff for Square Enix and not hearing anything about Dot Hack. One of those.
Okay. Alex, what about you? Your best in show and your biggest disappointment?
Best in show was definitely Nintendo. I think it was Nintendo as a whole, because they showed off a lot of good things, even the Mario Party and the WarioWare and all that. So I can't pick one specifically from them, but the most or biggest disappointment, can I say everybody that wasn't Nintendo or or Xbox, because Gearbox was abysmal. There was nothing from Konami at all. There was nothing from a lot of companies. I would have to say the Square Enix Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin as being the biggest disappointment I've ever seen from E3, period.
Okay. For me, best in show, I got to give it to Nintendo, specifically for Metroid Dread. Like that alone was worth the price of admission for me this year. That was the if that would have been the shirt ripping moment for me if I hadn't been, wearing an actual shirt that I didn't want to actually tear in half like I did when they announced Link's Awakening. True story. Biggest disappointment, I'm going to have to go with the whole Square Enix presentation, just because the lack of care shown to the Final Fantasy franchise, the fact that most of it was Guardians of the Galaxy followed by, like, I timed it. It's like 90 seconds of mobile trailers that are like 5 or 6 seconds each. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, I actually had to stop and check the play speed on the stream when I watched the Square Enix conference, because I thought that I might have accidentally clicked it to double speed, because those trailers just went by so fast. It was horribly paced. Stranger of Paradise, I could not give less of a shit about. Although, makes a fun drinking game. Take a shot every single time someone says chaos. Square Enix just needs to just get their act together. I mean, I don't know what the hell's going on over there, but they need to start getting their house in order really quick.
Their problem is they only have Nomura in charge of every other game that they're making, and everything he makes no sense. The shining light in the darkness might be the producer of Final Fantasy 16, because he's the guy that was in charge of the MMOs, which, from what I hear, Final Fantasy 14 is really good.
Yeah, Yoshi P's actually, well, he is an enormous troll, but he is actually genuinely a good producer, and VF14 is actually very, very good.
Because they've lost, if you look, they lost about 5 of their head senior dev and executive producers and directors for games over the last 15 years. They've been bleeding them dry. And you're left with Kitase, you're left with Nomura, and they're basically tag teaming the Final Fantasy franchise, the main line, for the most part. You're left with Yoshi there, and that's it. They used to have a lot of different people that worked on different games, and that's why the games had a big variety. They've got these small teams, and they're farming out stuff to other companies to do a lot of their mobile stuff. But you're right, they're in sort of a chaotic situation. They need more young talent.
Because, I mean, like, you talk about people leaving. Well, like, Sakaguchi, the man's been there 30 years. He's got to retire at some point.
Well, he left in 2001. He left after Final Fantasy 9. Like, when they did the merger, he didn't want to stay. So he's been gone. He made Blue Dragon, and he made Lost Odyssey, which is what I call real next Final Fantasy. But he's basically been off doing his own thing, and he made a Final Fantasy claymation style game for Apple now. But I wouldn't be surprised if they start calling him back, because like they might just like at this point go, we need to save our company. We need proper direction from somebody who's like knows what they're doing when it comes to these games. And as it is, I get worried every time that we see another game from Final Fantasy. I'm like, is it going to be a Kingdom Hearts style game where it makes no sense?
We shall see. But but that's about all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. That has been our 2021 E3 Blowout. Alex, I want to thank you for coming on the show as our guest commentator. So why don't you tell the people before we leave where they can find more of your stuff?
Oh, it was my pleasure. You can find me. I'm basically in charge of all the socials for This Week in Geek. So on Twitter at This Week in Geek, thisweekingeek.net. And if you go on Facebook and check us out, I'm handling the socials, so you can go through that as well.
Alrighty, and with that is all the time we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you guys next time. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm Skyblaze.
Alright, we'll see you next time. Taka, play us out.